Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are walking through a book that has legitimately saved lives and completely revolutionized the field of mental health. If you have ever felt trapped in a dark room of your own thoughts, if you constantly criticize yourself, or if you feel like your emotions are a reflection of an absolute, objective reality, rather than just a passing state of mind, this video is going to change the way you think forever. We are breaking down the legendary masterpiece, Feeling Good, The New Mood Therapy, by Dr. David D. Burns. This book is the ultimate Bible for cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Dr. Burns takes this highly effective psychological framework out of the elite therapist offices and hands it directly to you, the consumer. The core premise is mind-blowingly simple, yet completely radical. Your thoughts create your emotions. Get comfortable, get your mental notebook ready, and let us dive into how you can rewrite your brain chemistry using nothing but the power of your own logic. Part 1. The Revolution in the Therapy Room. Let us start our story in the 1970s at the University of Pennsylvania. A young psychiatrist named Dr. David Burns is completing his residency. He has been trained in traditional psychoanalysis, which means he spends hours listening to patients talk about their childhoods, their dreams, and their deep pasts. But Dr. Burns is deeply frustrated. He looks around his clinic and notices that many of his depressed patients are not actually getting better. They come in week after week, month after month, sinking deeper into sadness, hopelessness, and self-loathing. The standard medical view at the time was that depression was simply a chemical imbalance in the brain, a biological flaw that could only be cured with heavy medications. But Dr. Burns stumbled across the work of his mentor, Dr. Aaron Beck, who was pioneering a completely different approach. Dr. Beck noticed that depressed individuals share a common trait. They are constantly processing reality through a heavily distorted, negative lens. They are not suffering from a random emotional malfunction. They are actively giving themselves a non-stop internal lecture about how terrible, worthless, and hopeless they are. This realization led to the birth of cognitive behavioral therapy. The word cognitive simply means thought or perception. CBT rests on three fundamental principles. First, your moods are created entirely by your cognitions. The way you feel right now is a direct result of the thoughts running through your head at this very moment. Second, when you are feeling depressed or anxious, your thoughts are almost always completely distorted. You are looking at the world through a cracked, dark mirror that twists reality into something ugly and terrifying. Third, because these negative thoughts are based on logical errors rather than facts, you can systematically dismantle them using conscious reason. This discovery was revolutionary. It meant that you do not have to be a passive victim of your dark moods. You have the power to change how you feel by changing how you think. Part 2. The 10 Cognitive Distortions. To help his patients map out their faulty thinking, Dr. Burns isolated 10 specific mental traps that he calls the cognitive distortions. These are the specific ways your brain lies to you when you are feeling down. Let us break down each one of these lies so you can spot them in your own life. All or nothing thinking. This is the trap of perfectionism. You look at things in black and white categories. If your performance falls short of perfect, you see yourself as a total failure. Imagine a student who gets an 85% on an exam. Instead of celebrating a solid grade, they think, "I am a complete idiot. My academic career is over." There is no middle ground, no nuance, and no room for human imperfection. Overgeneralization, you see a single negative event as a never-ending pattern of defeat. You use words like always or never when describing your life. If you ask someone out on a date and they politely decline, overgeneralization steps in and whispers, "You will always be alone, you will never find love, and everyone is always going to reject you." You take one isolated data point and use it to paint a bleak future. Mental filter. You pick out a single negative detail and dwell on it exclusively so that your vision of all reality becomes darkened, much like a drop of ink that discolors a whole glass of water. Imagine giving a brilliant presentation at work. 99 people rave about how incredible you were, but one person gives a slightly critical comment. If you suffer from the mental filter distortion, you erase all 99 compliments and spend the next 3 days obsessing over that one critical remark. Disqualifying the positive. This is a particularly sinister distortion because it actively destroys your self-esteem. You do not just ignore positive experiences, you transform them into negative ones by insisting they do not count. If someone pays you a genuine compliment and says you look beautiful today, you immediately think, they are just saying that to be nice, or they want something from me. You build a fortress that blocks any joy or validation from entering your life. Jumping to conclusions, you make a negative interpretation even though there are no definite facts that convincingly support your conclusion. This distortion has two common variations: mind reading and fortune telling. Mind reading is when you arbitrarily conclude that someone is looking down on you or thinking poorly of you without bothering to check it out. You see a friend pass you on the street without saying hello, and you instantly think, they hate me. I must have offended them. In reality, they just forgot their glasses and could not see you. Fortune telling is when you anticipate that things will turn out badly, and you feel convinced that your prediction is an already established fact. You tell yourself, I am definitely going to freeze up during my interview tomorrow, so why even bother preparing? Magnification and minimization. Dr. Burns calls this the binocular trick. You blow things way out of proportion or shrink them into insignificance depending on what serves your negative mood. When you look at your own mistakes or flaws, you look through the magnifying end of the binoculars, making them appear catastrophic and unforgivable. But when you look at your strengths, achievements, or resources, you flip the binoculars around, making them look tiny and completely unimportant. Emotional reasoning. You assume that your negative emotions necessarily reflect the way things really are. You tell yourself, I feel it, therefore it must be true. If you feel overwhelmed and guilty when you wake up, emotional reasoning convinces you that you must be a terrible, unproductive person. If you feel frightened about getting on an airplane, you conclude that flying is objectively dangerous. You let your shifting emotional weather dictate your view of reality. Should statements. You try to motivate yourself and others by using shoulds, shouldn'ts, musts, and oughts. This creates a massive amount of unnecessary guilt, frustration, and resentment. When you direct should statements toward yourself, you feel guilty and inadequate because you can never live up to your own rigid, artificial standards. When you direct should statements toward other people, you feel angry and frustrated because the world refuses to behave the way you think it should. Labeling and mislabeling. This is an extreme form of all or nothing thinking. Instead of describing your error, you attach a definitive, negative label to your entire identity. If you lose a game of chess, you do not say, I made a tactical error on the 20th move. Instead, you say, I am a loser. If you burn dinner, you do not say, I left the oven on too long. You say, I am a bad cook. Labeling turns a temporary behavior into a permanent personal defect. Personalization. You see yourself as the cause of some negative external event, which you were not primarily responsible for. This is the mother of all guilt. If your child brings home a poor report card from school, personalization causes you to think, this proves that I am a horrible parent. It is all my fault. You take responsibility for the choices, moods, and behaviors of other people, completely ignoring the fact that you do not control the universe. Part 3. The lethal blueprint of self-esteem. Now that we know the 10 distortions, let us explore why they are so dangerous to our identity. Dr. Burns explains that depression is fundamentally a disease of low self-esteem. When you are depressed, you come to a tragic conclusion. You believe that your worth as a human being is zero. How do we arrive at this conclusion? We do it by creating artificial conditions for our self-worth. We tell ourselves, my worth depends on my achievement, my net worth, my looks, or my popularity. Dr. Burns systematically dismantles this concept of conditional worth. He asks a powerful philosophical question: how can you measure the value of a human being? Can you measure it by your productivity? If so, does that mean an elderly person who can no longer work has less human worth than a CEO? Can you measure it by your bank account? If so, does that mean a teacher who changes thousands of lives has less value than a corrupt billionaire? The truth is that human worth is an abstract concept that cannot be measured, graded, or earned. You do not have to earn your right to feel good about yourself any more than you have to earn your right to breathe oxygen. Your worth is a baseline given. Once you realize that your mistakes, your failures, and the opinions of others cannot alter your fundamental worth, the fortress of your depression begins to crumble. Part 4. The Daily Log of Automatic Thoughts. CBT is not just a philosophy, it is a practical workbook. Dr. Burns introduces a specific, written exercise that is the primary tool for healing, the triple column technique. When you feel an immediate drop in your mood, you do not just sit there and let the dark thoughts spiral. You take out a piece of paper and draw 2 vertical lines to create 3 distinct columns. In the left-hand column, you write down your automatic thoughts. These are the raw, unfiltered, cruel things your brain is whispering to you. For example, I messed up that presentation today, my boss thinks I am incompetent, and I am going to get fired. In the middle column, you write down the cognitive distortions present in that thought. You look at your list of 10 traps and identify them. In this case, you are jumping to conclusions, fortune-telling, and practicing all-or-nothing thinking. In the right-hand column, you write down your rational response. This is where you step into the role of a defense attorney for your own soul. You write down objective, realistic facts that counter the automatic thought. You might write, "Yes, I stumbled over a few words during the presentation, but my boss smiled at the end and thanked me for the data. I have a long history of good reviews here, and one average presentation does not mean I am going to get fired." Dr. Burns stresses that this exercise must be written down. You cannot just do it in your head. When you leave the thoughts inside your mind, they twist and turn like ghosts, maintaining their terrifying power. But when you force them onto paper, you drag them into the cold light of logic, exposing them for the ridiculous lies they actually are. Part 5. The illusion of motivation. One of the most common complaints Dr. Burns heard from his depressed patients was, "Dr. Burns, I know I should do my laundry, go for a walk, or work on my resume, but I just do not feel motivated. I am waiting until I feel the urge to do it." Dr. Burns calls this the motivation myth. We live under the false assumption that motivation precedes action. We think the sequence goes, motivation leads to action, which leads to achievement. But when you are depressed, that sequence is completely broken. You will never wake up feeling motivated to do difficult things. Dr. Burns reorders the sequence to reflect how the human brain actually works. Action comes first, which creates success, which then generates motivation. To help patients break out of behavioral paralysis, he created the lethargy log and the daily activity schedule. You map out your day hour by hour, planning small, manageable tasks. Next to each task, you write down 2 predictions on a scale of 0 to 100, how difficult you think it will be, and how much pleasure or mastery you expect to get from it. When patients actually perform the task, even something as simple as making their bed or answering one email, they consistently find that the task was much easier and far more rewarding than their depressed brain predicted. Action is the ultimate cure for lethargy. You do not need to feel like doing it. You just have to do it, and the feeling will follow. Part 6. Dismantling the anger bomb. While feeling good is famous for treating sadness and anxiety, Dr. Burns devotes a massive section of the book to the emotion of anger. Anger is often seen as an empowering feeling, a shield against vulnerability. But chronic anger is an exhausting, destructive force that destroys relationships and poisons your internal peace. Dr. Burns reveals that the root cause of almost all anger is a should statement. When you get angry at someone, it is because they are violating a rule that you have written in your head. You think, that driver shouldn't cut me off, my partner should always wash their dishes, or my coworkers must respect my time. The problem is that the universe does not care about your rulebook. Other people have their own rulebooks, their own conditioning, and their own selfish priorities. When you demand that reality bend to your internal shoulds, you create a state of permanent frustration for yourself. To heal your anger, you must practice cognitive reframing. You have to replace your absolute shoulds with preferences. Instead of saying, my partner should never be messy, you say, I would prefer it if my partner kept things clean, but they are an independent human being who is currently tired, so it makes sense that they left that plate there. This shift does not mean you become a doormat. It means you gain the calm clarity required to set healthy boundaries without exploding into a toxic rage. Part 7. Defeating the fear of criticism. Many of us live our lives on high alert, terrified of what other people think of us. We bend over backwards to avoid criticism, treating a negative comment from a boss, a peer, or a stranger on the internet as a definitive verdict on our existence. Dr. Burns provides a brilliant, counterintuitive strategy for handling verbal attacks, the verbal judo technique. When someone criticizes you, your natural reflex is either to counterattack with rage or to collapse into defensive compliance. Verbal judo offers a third path. You agree with the truth inside the criticism, disarming the attacker completely. Imagine someone walks up to you and says, you are completely disorganized and your room is a total disaster. Instead of getting defensive, You look for a grain of truth in their statement and say, "You are entirely right. My desk is really messy today, and I have been slacking on my cleaning." By agreeing with the fact without accepting the negative label, you take all the wind out of the critic's sails. They expect a fight, but you hand them agreement. You separate your behavior from your identity. Your desk might be messy, but that does not make you a worthless human being. Part 8. The chemical balance versus the thought balance. As the book nears its conclusion, Dr. Burns tackles the raging debate between medication and psychotherapy. He makes it clear that he is not anti-medication. For individuals suffering from severe endogenous depression or bipolar disorder, psychiatric drugs can be a life-saving foundation that stabilizes the brain. But he presents compelling data showing that for the vast majority of mild to moderate depression, CBT is not only as effective as medication, but it has a significantly lower relapse rate. Why? Because a pill does not teach you how to think. A pill might alter your serotonin levels for a few hours, but it cannot fix your cognitive distortions. The minute you stop taking the medication, your old, twisted patterns of thought return, dragging you right back down into the dark. CBT hands you a psychological toolkit that you can use for the rest of your life. It builds permanent resilience. Part 9. The silent assumptions of your soul. Beneath your daily automatic thoughts lay a set of deep, foundational beliefs that Dr. Burns calls your silent assumptions. These are the core operating systems of your psyche, usually written during your childhood. They are the grand rules you live by. Some people live under the silent assumption of the approval addiction. I must be loved and approved of by everyone in my life to feel happy. Others live under the achievement addiction. My value as a human being is directly tied to my status, my productivity, and my success. These assumptions are ticking time bombs. If your assumption is that you need everyone's approval, your happiness is completely held hostage by the whims of fickle human beings. If your assumption is that you must always achieve, the day you face retirement, illness, or an economic downturn, your identity will completely collapse. CBT invites you to look at these silent assumptions honestly, challenge their validity, and replace them with flexible, compassionate philosophies that allow you to live freely. The ultimate takeaway. As we close out this incredible journey, let us bring it right back to you. Look at your life right now. The next time a wave of sadness, anxiety, or guilt washes over you, do not panic. Do not conclude that you are broken or that your life is a disaster. Stop, take a breath, and look at the thoughts running through your mind. Ask yourself, what lie is my brain telling me right now? Am I overgeneralizing? Am I practicing all or nothing thinking? Am I emotional reasoning? You are the author of your own internal narrative. You have the power to challenge the distortions, talk back to your inner critic, and reclaim your joy. You deserve to feel good, not because you are perfect, but because you are alive. What is the #1 cognitive distortion that you find yourself falling into most often? Are you ready to pick up a pen and start rewriting your automatic thoughts today? Let me know your commitments in the comments down below. If this deep dive summary shattered some mental illusions and handed you a new blueprint for happiness, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel so you never miss another life-changing book breakdown, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that their thoughts are not reality. Keep thinking clearly, stay logical, protect your self-esteem, and I will see you in the next video.